Hello and welcome. Today we are meeting with Maneesha Ahluwalia, who is a board certified infectious disease physician in Baltimore, Maryland, and also a certified life coach. And she's here to share her story with us and talk a little bit about her focus in coaching and her experience as a physician. So welcome, Maneesha. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you, Kathy.
So let's start out by talking about what brought you into coaching and what you find coaching, how that has affected your work as a physician.
Yes, this story is always so fun. I think what brought me into coaching was being a client.
Mhm.
First, being a podcast listener, as I think a lot of us are. Definitely the podcast world brought me into the coaching world because I listened to Katrina Ubell's podcast and then Brooke Castillo's podcast. And then I became a client of physicians who are coaches who trained at the life coach school, like Ali Nowitzki. I was also a client of Heather Hammerstedt, who's not trained at the life coach school, but also a physician and a coach. And it was a simultaneous experience. I was in both programs at the same time. And then it just went from there. I met so many people who were physicians, who were either thinking about coaching or already had graduated from the same school or were in the school at the same time. And then I ended up at the Brave Enough conference by Sasha Shilcutt. And I met with a bunch of people who had graduated, Sunny, Bonnie, like all the familiar names. Maybe you were there, I'm not sure.
I wasn't.
And I sat at a round table and we just talked about who went to the school and what it meant to go to the school and to get the certification. And the most interesting comment that was shared with me that time was, even if you don't do anything with the certification, it's worth it for your own transformation.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, I was shocked because the price tag is so
Yeah.
high, and for somebody to say that,
Right.
I was really intrigued. And then everything just fell into place in that I wanted to quit my medical job for many different reasons. And the same day that I quit, no joke, Brooke Castillo opened a new spot for the March class starting the same month that I quit my job.
Wow. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm taking it as a sign. I'm signing up. And I quit my job, no income, and I'm paying my first monthly installment to be in the school. It just felt right. It was the right time for me
Mm-hmm.
because of so many personal and professional things that had happened. And it was the next thing.
Right.
Yeah.
What made you interested? I think that's a common story, right? Like we hear a little bit about coaching and then it takes us a little further and takes a little further. And before you know it, you're training to be a coach and working with other physicians or other clients. And so it's a very common story, but I'm wondering what piqued your interest in coaching and listening to a podcast in the first place? Like, was there something that you were feeling that you were longing for, that there was something missing or a question that was unanswered for you?
Yeah. And probably like many others, I was at my low point.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was at burnout at work. I was in burnout with my fertility journey. I was at burnout with my health that was leading to infertility, or so I thought. And I was burnt out in my marriage. So it was sort of a quadruple whammy, if you will.
Yeah.
And my colleague at work, another woman my age, very, very compassionate, friendly, lovely woman, said, "Why don't you listen to this podcast?" So I really credit her, although she says I told her to listen to this podcast. So who knows who's right. But anyway, one of us encouraged the other. And the podcast became a lifeline.
Mhm.
And so did this other Facebook group that I was in with women physicians.
Uh-huh.
It was just new ideas,
Yeah.
new thoughts that I just had not had on my own. Or if I had, it was so quiet
Yeah.
that this new world, this new auditory world of podcasts and this Facebook group, it was sort of giving me a louder suggestion of other thoughts I could think.
Right.
And that's, I think, what drew me in. It was like, oh, wait, there's this new way I could think if I wanted to, and other people are doing it. Maybe I can do it. Maybe it'll change things for me.
Right.
Because I didn't want to change my circumstances. I didn't want to change my marriage,
Hmm.
right? I didn't want to replace things in my life. I just wanted to feel better.
Right.
And it was the perfect recipe for me specifically because I was at that all-time low.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting how many of us in medicine, we're so resilient. We've got so much grit. And we're so good at holding on much longer than we should, right? And we kind of don't really notice that we're at that low or we've been at that low
Mhm.
until we're not in that space anymore, right? So I suspect that this was probably growing. There was probably, quadruple challenges.
Yeah.
I, but I bet this had been growing for a while.
Absolutely. We had already been in marriage counseling. I'd already been through miscarriages. Like it was not a secret that things were not going well. But maybe it was a secret to me or just my awareness of it. It was just like putting a band-aid on it by going to therapy or just going to doctor's appointments, but not really getting into the meat of it, into the heart of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that you're right. We just go through the motions because
Yeah.
that's how we
Because
know how to
that's what we
function.
do.
Yeah. And that's what I was doing in my personal life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How is that manifesting for you at work as an infectious disease physician? Like,
I'll tell you, the very last week before I quit work, um, I yelled at a patient and it was out of character for me.
yeah,
It's not like me to do that. And when I did it, I was like, oh, something is really off. Now,
yeah,
this is after I'd been coached a bit. So that, but it is a similar
right.
struggle, right? Like when you're just frustrated with everything,
Yeah, yeah,
each patient encounter, each new inpatient consult, each new meeting with the administrator, if everything
yeah,
is rubbing you the wrong way,
yeah.
it can't be everything else. There's got to be something. And not to say that there was something wrong with me, but just to say that maybe there's something that needs tending to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. This to bring it up into your awareness that, you know what, there really is something to look at here. And sometimes it's not until we get to a critical incident, whether it's, and physicians will share this, where it's like yelling at a patient or some type of unprofessional behavior, other that just arises, and it can be so shocking. And it's like this light bulb moment of, wow, things, I'm actually struggling more than I realized.
More than I realized. Or when the doctor said you're overweight,
Yeah,
and then she listed off like 6 other diagnoses that I was completely unaware of as a physician.
yeah, yeah.
You're overweight, you're insulin resistant, you're pre-diabetic, you're overweight, you have vitamin D deficiency, you have low iron and something else. I don't remember. But it was just
Yeah.
like, what?
What? And here you are, because you're probably juggling all of this stuff, right? Going through your day, keeping it all together. We are so good at resilience and grit. I think that is, it's a wonderful thing. Medicine self-selects people for that, but it's a wonderful thing and allows us to achieve so much. And at the same time, it can really be to our detriment. Like, where do we cross that threshold of
Yeah.
what's helpful and when does it get to be problematic?
Yeah.
So what's different for you now? So you were at a low point in many areas of your life, and being coach, going through coaching, knowing the research that's out there that helps, that we know that there's evidence now that
Yeah.
yes, there's good studies out there that show, yeah, coaching really can help with physician well-being. So what's different for you now?
So physician and personal, to me, it's all the same at this point. What is my well-being, and whether it's in the physician world or the clinical world or my personal world, I can tell you there are two and actually three main incidences that occurred that had to do with ultimatums. One from my father: don't, break up with this guy or we're not coming to your medical school graduation.
Wow.
From my very first boss as an attending physician, who said, you're not generating enough productivity and revenue, so if you don't, we're going to let you go. And thirdly, from my husband, if you don't decide to have children, this marriage is over. And he said that, as so did his parents. And in the Indian culture, we take our in-laws to be our new family. Like, it is the new family. Even my dad was like, you listen to your in-laws now.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And these are just the cultural context that we grow up in, and we just accept them as yeah, okay, that's what we do. And I knew then that I I was in a weird place where I had to make an uncomfortable decision. And at that point, I was first I decided I can't have kids just because my husband wants me to. So we actually split for a month and we were separated, and it was devastating. And then I decided that I don't want to be without my husband. I love him. I'm going to go ahead and try to have kids because of this ultimatum. So it was really a very low point again. Like I was saying yes, but my heart wasn't there. And I bring this up because all those three incidences, right? Terrible resentment built inside of me. First from my dad from when I was graduating from medical school, then my first attending job, now my husband. And I have all this resentment. And I can tell you today, you know, after coaching, I don't feel the resentment anymore. And to let go of that, right? To let go of something that most people would probably hold on to for life.
Yeah.
And to just have awareness that it was there and now it's not there, and just to feel lighter and just to feel loving and compassionate for the same people and for myself rather than feeling the resentment.
Right.
What a 180 for life, for the second part of life.
Right.
The post-coaching part of life.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because I think that's when coaches talk about, even if you do nothing with it, just go through some coaching. It's worth it. I think that's what people are are alluding to, right? There's this sense of, wow,
Yeah.
I'm showing up in life differently now.
I'm showing up in life differently now.
Because I was able to set down some of that stuff, and the situation doesn't change. Our thinking about it changes.
Thinking about it changes. And I'll tell you, an extra layer that got added on was I realized when I had made the decisions, it felt like I was in a powerless place, that I was a victim of the ultimatums. But through coaching, you realize that you were actually making a choice, even if it was an ultimatum, right? So, and I always say this is my little tagline. When I realized I had a choice, I found my voice. I was able to speak because I realized, oh, wait, I was always in control. I could have left any day.
Yeah.
I could have left this marriage any day because we didn't have the same ideas about our life moving forward, but I chose not to. I chose not to.
Yeah.
And that agency, right? Like that's what we're all after. We all want our agencies back, especially as physicians where, you know, we feel like it's being taken away.
It's so interesting. That's such a common theme, isn't it? That as physicians, we feel like we don't have choices, that we have to do things, we have to live in a certain way, do certain things in a certain time frame, all of that. There's all of this pressure that we feel like we don't have agency. And I feel like with coaching, that's one of the greatest gifts that we bring to for physician wellness, is just recognizing that your agency is yours. Like that's a defining feature of what it is to be human.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It
So
brings it back to you. Coaching brings it back to you.
it does. It does. Do you feel like coaching was very different than counseling for you? That's another question that comes up for many people. It's like, well, how come you didn't see a therapist? Or maybe you did, but how is coaching different than therapy?
For me, there was a place of, it was a different time too. Like I got coached after counseling, marriage counseling.
Yeah.
It was a different time. I was in a different space when I reached out to a coach. It was much more generated by me to reach out to a coach, whereas the marriage counseling, it felt like it was forced, that we needed it. We had to do it. It was pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So just the fact that I sought it out on my own brought a different energy to the sessions.
Sure.
But then in session, it's really, I wasn't in a place of dysfunction. I was in a place of function, and then I wanted to be the next version. And so I think coaching can push you to the next version of yourself in a very compassionate way, in a very powerful way. And I think that's what I took from it, is the power that it gave me back. I don't know that therapy necessarily does that or did it for me. But again, I wasn't ever really in a therapy by myself. It was more like marriage counseling. So
Sure. Sure. And I think that, I mean, absolutely, there's times where counseling is what's needed. And there's other times where counseling is not needed, and coaching, it can really, there's a time for everything. Or I think coaching can be more effective. And when we're really looking at stepping into our agency and this professional and personal development that occurs across the lifespan, I feel like coaching can really help us as we're growing and developing as humans.
yeah.
So now, how are you working with people as a coach?
Currently, I work with my one-on-one clients.
Uh-huh.
I also coach for a former marriage counselor as a coach in his business, the same one I was just talking about. And I also coach with Dr. Sunny Smith in her program. So that's how I show up for coaching. I am very interested in growing my own personal coaching business and really kind of helping the Indian Desi community. I want to help Desi aunties who are unhappy with their kids' lifestyle choices, whether they decided to remain single, unmarried, child-free, or just don't like their kids' partner choice.
Right.
And conversely, the Indian professional who really is having a hard time connecting with their parents because of their choice of lifestyle. And so that's kind of where I would love to grow into and become the coach for the Indians in that way.
Yeah, and what a wonderful niche. I mean, to be able to show up and offer that support and hold space for other women going through whatever they're going through. So fantastic, both physicians and non-physicians, it sounds like.
Physicians and non-physicians, female or male.
Oh, yeah. Female and male. Wonderful. Wonderful. Good for you.
Yeah.
Fantastic. What are some of the things that you think our listeners would benefit from or need to know about as they consider working with you or working with another physician coach?
I think it's one of these places, a coaching session is one of these places where you don't have to prepare anything. You don't have to take any homework home. There's no work to be done other than being present in the session and letting the coach lead you in finding your own thoughts. That's all it is. Let the coach hear your thoughts and read them back to you or verbalize them back to you. It's fascinating. Come to it with curiosity. Come to a session just like being so curious about what is it that keeps me stuck, and then what is it that I can do to get out of the stuckness. And it's just such an opportunity to observe who you are in such a new way, and it really can bring out the best parts of you. And also at the same time, and this is huge for all of us as physicians, accept the parts of you that you don't currently like.
Yes.
And just allow all of that. Allow the resentment that I had, and then acknowledge that it's there, and then move past it. That was the magic for me, and that can be the magic for the person coming to coaching. Accept where you are and then just build on that. It's so amazing.
And that's really where the self-compassion comes in, I think. It's like there's this sense of acceptance of not needing to be any different, and not using any type of self-care to like have it be like an injury to ourselves, that there's something, that we're broken, that there's something wrong with us, or we're not worthy, or whatever it might be. So
that's form of self-care, right? Like getting to know your thoughts. I don't know what other better self-care there is. I can't.
I know, and I keep saying it over and over again. My tagline: self-care is the foundation for excellence in medicine, and I really, really believe that. It's like stepping into that self-compassion for ourselves and advocating for ourselves and treating ourselves with such gentleness. It's like that's where we begin, and that allows us to work with others then. And we hear that over and over. You know, the Dalai Lama has said that, like, we hear that everywhere. It's like we have to take care of ourselves first, and it feels selfish to do that. But in doing so and treating ourselves with kindness, then we have something to give. You mentioned this acceptance and then also curiosity. And I love that, because I think for physicians, we all have such curious minds, right? We love problem solving, and we have curious minds. And approaching this coaching with curiosity, I think will serve us all well. I think it can be tricky. And I'm wondering if you've had this experience, because we're also smart. We act like we can think our way out of it, right? It's like, well, I can figure this out. And we're curious, but then we're also so analytical that we just kind of think ourselves, we trap ourselves in the corner. And so approaching it with this openness and having someone reflect that back to us. I can't believe, and I wonder if this has happened for you. I can't believe the number of times where I didn't see it. I just didn't see it.
Yeah.
And then I'm working with a coach and it's like, oh,
No.
just having someone outside your head to reflect something back on me, for me,
Yeah.
has made such a difference.
I also think it's really interesting. It happens with almost every woman physician client where once they intellectually understand that a thought creates a feeling and creates all the way to results, well, okay, but now I understand how to do it. Why isn't it happening perfectly every time? That one is classic, right? And I even like to warn the client in the beginning. It's like, okay, I know you're really smart and I know you get this and I know you think you could do it every time. And you're going to start beating yourself up the minute you can't do it every time. It's like, just expect it, and that's the other part that's so brilliant about coaching. We get to expect what we've always done and just be with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This gaining skills of understanding the mind.
Mhm.
And like, of course,
Yep.
we're going to think this. Of course, you're going to expect it.
Mm-hmm.
Expect that this is what's going to happen.
If you're so smart, then go ahead and expect it.
Yeah, but there is this sense too, and I got this tripped me up for a couple of years actually, where it's almost like, oh, I just need to think happy thoughts and everything will be perfect. Is that what coaching is all about? It's like, well, wait a minute, we need to change medicine. Medicine is broken in America. We need to change the culture of medicine, and how is this helping, right? And so I think there's this sense of just walking around with sunshine and daisies, like that didn't land for me. I'm like, well, that's and I think it's just because I heard it. It probably wasn't what people were saying, but that's what I interpreted as.
Mm-hmm.
That coaching was, you just change your thoughts to ones that are not, they're not believable, but they're all cheerful.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you or your clients have experienced that.
Yeah, well, I think social media, right? Facebook, Instagram, it's a world of let's paint the positivity for the most part. I think more and more people are becoming more real on social media, but what we do see is a lot of positivity. And so you come in almost with this bias that the person in front of you who's helping you with your thoughts is going to want you to think, positive thoughts and have positive emotions, but absolutely it's not that at all, because positive is only half the experience of the human experience, right? So really coaching is about, it's okay to be all of the positive and all of the negative. And sometimes I feel a little hesitant because then I'm selling somebody on the idea of being okay with negative emotions, and I think that that's not what they're here for. They want to feel better, but really that's how we open up to the other 50%, right?
Yeah.
Allowing for the negative allows for the positive, and both are okay, and that's the beauty of it.
Right. And that I love is about like being present in this moment with everything it contains, the good and the bad, the joy and the sorrow. Really allows us to be, it allows us to show up differently rather than kind of escaping with our thoughts or with our busyness or with food or alcohol or whatever it might be, that we buffer with, that we escape with. And so to be present in this with everything that it includes, good and bad.
Yeah.
And that's an act of courage, I think.
Because you're trying to unlearn what
Yeah.
we've been learning our entire lives, which is, oh, you got to be happy.
Right. Right.
But wait, oh, so nobody told me it was okay to be sad or or disappointed or angry or
Right.
resentful.
Yeah.
Like those are okay sometimes.
Right. Absolutely. And it's part of the human condition, the human experience.
Totally. Sunny Smith, she coached me the day that I felt jealous that somebody else was pregnant, and she was like, "Yeah, you're jealous.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty human." And I was like, "Oh, that is it right there. I didn't know. That
Right.
is human."
Yeah, because we have ideas about how we should be, what's
Yeah.
socially acceptable, what's professional, what is the person we should be or how we want to be,
Totally.
rather than actually what it really is like, of what we're really experiencing and looking at that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful growth and development. So I'm wondering now, with your training in infectious disease, do you, and I don't know if you're able to answer this, do you see yourself continuing to practice as a physician at some point? Have you stepped away from clinical care altogether? Where are you at with that?
Well, I told you I quit medicine in March, and then that was the same month as the pandemic, and I'm an infectious disease physician. So it was almost just like this joke from the heavens, I suppose. But anyways, I went back in, but not as an employed physician. So I can tell you, I'm not going to be employed by any hospital or group ever again. I will only practice as a locums physician or an independent contractor.
Right.
I want that lifestyle where I choose when I work, I choose when I don't work. I choose how I work, and I choose the rate at which I work, my pay. So that's what I love about this new way of working. I still get to work with patients, inpatient,
Yeah.
but I get to practice how I want to practice and
Right.
when. Yeah.
That sounds like a wonderful fit for where you're at. And it's interesting because I suspect that people in our audience are going to hear that and feel like there's thoughts about that, right?
Yeah.
That
Oh
this
yeah.
is what a physician looks like. A physician should be this, and then fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so to open up to the idea that you can work in a way that feels right for you, that's sustainable for you, that contributes and helps others,
Mm-hmm.
but might be different than what we think about what a doctor is when we go through our training.
Mm-hmm.
When we're in medical school and residency, it's like we have this idea of what a physician career looks like.
Yeah.
And to be able to think outside the box, it's like, yes, that is sometimes what a physician career looks like, and can also look like this and still be a wonderful contribution and still be, a beautiful part of medicine, that there's nothing less than about it.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Yeah.
and that we all have our own answer to that. I mean, I work with so many physicians who are thinking of leaving medicine forever, and we make some adjustments, and it's like, well, they still want to practice medicine. They love patient care and what they're doing. There's just pieces of it that they're struggling with, and rather than this, I don't know how many years I can keep this up. Like, okay, let's see, like, how can we make it sustainable for you?
Exactly. How can I keep the parts that I want and
Yeah.
let go of the stuff that really is the part that bothers me? It's not that I don't want to be a doctor or I don't want to work in the US medical system. There's just parts of it that never worked for me. Never. My entire career of 12, 13 years.
Yeah.
And so let's leave it. Let's try something new. Let's try a new way of being in the system, but so that it works for me.
Right.
I don't work for it.
Right. Yeah. And do you think at an earlier stage in your career, you would have been able to give yourself that permission? Like,
I didn't
let's
know
say you were 2 years
I
out of
didn't know I had the
residency.
permission. I didn't know I had the choice. I thought, like just like everybody else, you finish medical school, you have loans, you go get a job that's not, the whole
Yeah.
call and day after day. It's you only think there's one way to do it.
Yeah.
Unless there's somebody ahead of you who's shown you that no, there's definitely different ways to do it. So I think our generation, so to speak, hopefully is showing that to others, that there's plenty of ways to be a doctor and do other things, because the doctor career doesn't have to be defining of our lives. And I certainly don't define myself as a doctor. It's what I do.
Right.
But as a coach, I know what it is to have a calling now.
Yeah.
The way
Wow.
that medicine never was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else, as we're wrapping up here, anything else you'd like to share with the physicians in the US and Canada who might be listening to this?
Yeah.
Just some parting thoughts.
What we want to talk about physician wellness, and I don't think there's anything more than accepting that our human thoughts and human emotions are what keep us well. So our humanness is our wellness, right? Not the superhumans that we're trying to be, because that does create the unwellness, right? The burnout.
Yeah.
And that's the message I think is so important for all of us to hear, is it's when we're trying to be superhuman, that leads to burnout. But when we try to be human and accept the parts of us that are human, it keeps us well, really well.
Yeah.
So physician wellness is just be human. And it's like be human.
Fully.
Yeah.
Fully human.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you. There's a sense of authenticity to that.
Yeah.
That I think is so liberating for all of us. A sense of like, this is what it is like to be human in this experience, all of it. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for talking with me today and for sharing your thoughts with our physician colleagues as we all work to change the culture of medicine and and promote and support one another, promote physician wellness. So I really appreciate your meeting with me today.
Thank you so much, Kathy.
My pleasure.